Hello, people. Welcome to the Pedal Dive podcast. You've heard JHS talk about it. Josh loves this design. It is, of course, the Electra Distortion. I'm Hello Sailor Joe, and today my co-host is...
Space Wolf, John Mulholland.
And Andrzej, who you might know from yet another review channel, or AM Guitar, as it used to be, the most terribly named guitar channel on YouTube.
I love that. He's just got an A minor chord.
A minor. That's all you can find. Yep. For years and years, everyone just found A minor chords. Could never find me, and it didn't twig. It took me years to twig.
Man.
Oh yeah.
I think that's epic, though.
Metrics, man. They're insane.
I thought Andrzej Marczewski's too long, so AM Guitar, that looked cool. I got straps done, t-shirts done. It's like
That's class. So, how's everyone doing? Anyone been up to much this week?
Shout out, say hi to Ben Marshall in the chat there. He's here.
Oh, do you know what? I'm not professional. I haven't even got the chat up.
I've been on some other live streams recently. I'm figuring this out, interacting with some different people, and it's like, hey, what if we interact with our audience?
Ben is a good guy. Ben is Marstronics. We got Nearly Bob as well. Evening.
Oh man, awesome. Cheers, guys.
So that's two more than I'm used to on live stream, so let's do this.
Well, It hasn't been a car crash so far because I haven't had technical difficulties yet. So we'll hold on for that one.
I'm liking the positivity there, Jay.
Hey, Saint Bowie protect us is what it is.
Absolutely.
There you go. Oh. It's when he starts asking me to recall circuits up as a pitcher that it starts getting complex. Me and technology don't mix. As soon as you get past a transistor an op amp is my limit. We got Mike Rivers, probably one of the most talented pedal builders going. Hello, Mike. How's it going?
Hey, Mike. Mr. FX.
Oh, man, he's built nearly every pedal that we've talked about so far.
Built him great.
Fantastic.
Oh, yeah. And his enclosures. Dude, what he puts them in, that's a work of art.
So I'm now Googling this because I probably follow him actually.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah, he does Mike Rivers guitars on Instagram.
Cameras. Yeah, so the old Kodak cameras and the Brownie cameras and stuff. He builds them in them.
Oh, I've seen these. Yeah, these are cool. Yes. Yeah.
Epic, mate.
Very cool. Anyway, yes. Other people's cool stuff.
So the Electra Distortion. Now, I'm going to be honest. I haven't got much experience with this circuit. I've built it a couple of times. I built an LPB1 loads of times and just never put the two together. And I think I've maybe built 4, and I haven't really modified them. I just used them as an add-on distortion for another pedal until I built yours, Andrzej. And then, well, half built it, and then Simon had to fix it because I messed up the clone buffer. Get in. Cheers, Simon, if you're watching this post-show.
Yeah.
I did say it was the Oracle.
Yeah. I mean, it was a bit of debugging there. Didn't want to upset you too much by it being broken on the first day of usage.
Oh well, it just shows that they're easy to work on. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, a few components. Yeah,
exactly.
For me, I went down the rabbit hole for so long of the fuzz face and that feedback loop circuit that I didn't even really consider this until it just popped up as that little challenge I gave to myself. I always had schematics for it in my files of things I'm going to build but never did. And so I was just like, hey, there's a transistor. There's a resistor that looks like it would work. Here's another resistor that looks like a common value. There's some diodes. I've got an LED and 2 silicon diodes. I could build an Electra probably. And I did, and it sounded pretty cool. So I was like, I'm going to dive into this. And it just turned into an obsession. I mean, I sent Joe my schematic here that, turned into this guy, the Flash. I'll take him out of the picture here.
Yeah.
But this thing is marked up all over the place from all the different notes and the different experiments and different things that I've done on it. So this is the birth of a new effect. I'm kind of documenting it. And one thing I found out is there's so many effects out there that are based off of this common emitter amplifier circuit. And just depending on how you bias the transistor with your voltage resistance and how that affects everything else, as far as the signal path, and it's a good circuit for somebody that's going to build their very first pedal, because it teaches you a lot about how this stuff works, and it's in such a simple format that you can really understand it and see like how changing different things in different stages affect it. And it's just like, it's a no-brainer. And hats off to Josh Scott for that series that he's been doing with the short circuit series. I mean, he is going even deeper into this than we ever could. And like, starting you, like, if you want to watch episode 1, he will like take you from the very basics of like how the transistor works, and then up into more complicated stuff. And if you're an experienced builder, you can skip around to the areas that interest you. And it's just a valuable resource. And I can't thank him enough for putting stuff like that out constantly.
Well, I've purposely not watched the Josh Scott things, because I feel like I'm going to come at this from a student sort of point, from yourself. I mean, I've built a few of them, but I would say that this, not only building your first effects pedal, this could be your 5th one too. The amount of adaptations that is in your circuit, you could build several.
You could build a career off this effects pedal, really.
Well, I think people have.
People have.
Exactly. That's what I realized. Yeah, there's Lovejoy being a good example.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not a pedal builder. I've built one pedal. Our friend Hubcap John sent me a fuzz once. It worked for about 10 seconds, and then I killed it.
Like a true musician should.
Oh yeah.
Put it to its ultimate
rock and roll.
Yes.
I think it was just
if it
me.
Can't stand me, then it can't stand anybody.
But no, I did a bit. So I'd never even heard of the Electra, but I've been using them for ages. And so Joe, you might know actually, Eddie Rifkin's Karen, is based on an Earthquaker speaker cranker, which is an Electra. And so I started to do a deep dive, because I'd never heard of this until you mentioned it to me, and when you were sending me the pedal. So I actually started looking into it, and it's got the craziest history. That I won't go into.
Trotsky. There's just so many.
Yeah, and that's
more
about
well, it's about how it came about, because the history goes back to like 1976, and actually a series of guitars that were built, which had these effects modules you could plug in and out of these guitars.
Oh, come on.
And
I'm going to be researching this after this.
Oh, mate. So PJ and the Beards
awesome.
did a series on it, and basically talking about the fact that about 76, this thing appears, and there's a distortion circuit that they have a boost and a distortion. And it turned out that the boost is an LPB, and the distortion has 2 extra clipping diodes.
Ideal.
And it's and so Josh Scott was interviewed on this, and actually was saying that's what they think was the original Electra, the first one, as a series of guitars called the Electra guitar. And then there's loads of pedals that came out called Electra that were nothing related to it, and it kind of vanished.
I've seen them
came back in about 2007 as the DIYers pedal. Yeah. So it's when you actually start diving into it and realizing how many pedal builders have kind of started off with this and built onto it and added stuff to it. It's a really interesting, and it's, as I think for anyone who's listening who's not aware, it's a transistor to amplify with a couple of sort of tone shaping bits here and there, and then two diodes fed off to earth. So it's just a boost with clipping diodes. That's it.
So it's the opposite type of clipping to like the Tube Screamer that we covered last episode. The Tube Screamer is soft clipping. So the clipping diodes go back to the beginning of the circuit or to earlier on in the circuit, whereas these ones just clip straight to earth. So your sine wave is like literally chopped off at the point where the diode fires, basically. Yeah.
And it sounds cool.
It does. It sounds really cool.
Joe, oddly enough, when I was testing the one that I made you, it didn't sound as cool as when you sent me the sound clip of it. I was like, oh, well, it didn't sound like that when I had it.
I'll play it. If it all works, I'll play it later. But yeah, I mean, it's a really dynamic. I was going to use really sort of crappy guitar speed, but it's very dynamic. It responds really well because it's so simple. It's just you, a bit of clipping, then your amp. And it just feels like part of the amplifier. And it doesn't have, I love a Rat. And I think a Rat is also vaguely related to it as well, from what I was reading. But I love Rat. And I love the fact that they respond really well to what you do with your guitar. But what's really cool about this is that, you know, your guitar is so close to the amp that it's just these two little diodes that are just changing just little aspects of the way you're hitting hit the guitar, the volume control, all interact with it so well. It's just a great, simple pedal, and sounds as good as any other low gain distortion I've used, because it's not a high gain distortion that what you built me is.
Yeah, but it can be. Simple. That's the thing.
Yeah,
it's so cool about it. I've built ones that like they are making my amp clip. Like my red light's coming on my solid state 200 watt amp, and it is overloading stuff like you wouldn't believe with the volume. It's just like, it almost seems like a perceived, you know, more than doubling of volume when you kick this pedal on of what your clean tone is.
Well, unless the clon buffer's knackered, and then it gets really quiet.
Then it gets really quiet and doesn't work. Cheers, Simon.
And when you lift the diodes on this thing and do it as a clean boost, and you have your transistor attenuated just right, operating in that zone between like 3 to 5 volts, it just really crowds. I mean, you can turn that drive control where you just short everything to ground off the emitter and just go into complete drive, and you basically are clipping at the transistor. So you already have a clip signal that's asymmetrical that sounds really good, and then you can flavor it with what kind of transistor you want to use. That's another thing I discovered.
I was going to say that the transistor makes a big difference then.
Huge difference, because it is great results with the circuit,
MPSA 13.
I mean,
MPSA 13 Darlington with 2 transistors together. That thing makes this circuit come to life.
It does.
It's originally what I intended to use for yours, mate, but I couldn't find any. I thought I had some in my. I've got hundreds, and my wife is.
I know I've got some.
If she was watching this, she would be laughing, going, "What the hell?" Because I've literally got boxes of transistors coming out of my ears. I just couldn't find one. I went with an MPSA 18 in the end.
It's the joy of moving, Joe.
Yeah. Oh man,
the joy of moving. I mean,
we pick up the keys on Friday. I'm so excited.
I'm discovering so many parts. Like
yeah, that's mad. But I can't wait. I love that you went with yours, that you picked a flash drive and built each one from one unit. So you know what I mean? So this old thing has been given a life again, and all the components are still together. That really plays on my sensibilities.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've got the original one that I built, and the one that's in the box that I've been demonstrating is just based off of that. Like, the one that's in the box is being tuned to be actually put into an effects enclosure and sold. Like, and so I'm documenting the birth of this pedal. It's going to be like flash drive number 1 for sale. I'm keeping the original prototype board, and it's got a really cool like history to it, because I've documented like building it and everything and what went into it, why I built it. It was in the process of going through my components, just trying to clear some stuff out. I got a fly bothering me. That's why I suddenly grabbed it myself. I'm not having a heart attack online. So, but anyway, it's like, you know, the curse of having like that 360-degree peripheral vision. But anyway, I found this like little flash circuit like stuck in with a whole bunch of other things that I was going to scavenge, like germanium and like rare Japanese diodes off of, because I've got tech from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. My dad, you know, being who he was a radio and TV repair guy, hobbyist. He has every Heath kit ever made. There's a television behind me that was built in 1969 by him on the kitchen table in the apartment in Cincinnati that still works. It's all tube, all tube circuitry. So yeah, it's like, and I just saw this little thing from a flash, and I said, "What's on here?" Because I was looking for diodes and, you know, stuff like that. And I saw the transistor, and I just saw what it was, and it just something went off in my head. I've seen this used in a circuit somehow. And I grabbed an Electra schematic, and I said, I can make one. And so I figured I'll just make a series of videos and document it and see what happens. And it turned out to be what we're talking about now. And,
you just give me the most insane idea for the episode. I'm going to challenge everyone now. I'm challenging everyone now who watches this from now until the next, well, not the next episode, till this episode comes out, because it's happening. I challenge everyone to build a guitar effects pedal from a single old thing, radio, television, whatever, and then send me the pictures, videos, and we'll do a live stream and talk about it.
I'd love to see what you guys come up with.
Yeah, and if you guys are willing and capable, we'll have you on the show, because we can have up to 10 people in the green room get on that at Green Room.
Yeah,
And
if
we
you
can have
want
up to
to,
10 people, and we'll get them on
like,
and talk about each one of them.
you know, if you have Instagram and you want to follow Joe and myself on Instagram, we can come up with like some sort of group where we can like answer questions or anything, or like give people ideas from things that they've got, like hey, I found this, what can we do? Or like tell them where they can find schematics, anything like that. I think that's great, because
that's a cool idea.
Mike, I knew Mike would be the first one in there. Challenge accepted.
Of course,
this is going to be cool already.
Of course,
already I want to own it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I won't be joining this because Joe's seen my soldering, and it does.
Come on, Andrzej, join the dark side.
But I mean, I don't need to. I've got pedals everywhere. So I made one. I found a thing. It's a pedal. It now works like a pedal.
It's not a pedal-shaped object.
I've got to ask, input capacitor, which way did you go with it?
So for the build that I did, because the flash circuit that I built, I used that 0.1 electrolytic, and that's what's on my flash drive schematic. That kind of is the work in progress version of it right now, version 1.0. But I went with that because I figured that would give me the volume boost that I'm actually hearing. This is why this pedal, I think, in this configuration is like a monster. It was creating those doom tones by itself. It sounds like somebody's doom pedal board with just one transistor and some heavy like I don't know what's going on, but I think a lot of it has to do with the other capacitor. I'm taming that, because the higher that frequency is, or not frequency, I'm sorry, the higher that value is on the input capacitor, the more it's going to distort inherently, even before you start shunning the emitter to ground without a resistor. Even before you start lowering the resistance at the emitter, it's already distorting.
So for information, that's C1 on this drawing. It's 100 NF, which is 0.1 UF for everyone. It's sort of the standard sort of that's the standard unit that people would use, 100 NF for an input cap. I went with 47 NF because I have some really nice 47 NF caps, and I wanted Andrzej to have something that was cool, so I just put them in there. I wasn't going for the sound, I'm going to be honest. I was more going for a look. I wanted them to open the back of it and go, that looks good.
I mean, I did open the back of it and say that looks good. It's a cool looking. I'll post it up on Insta. So I took a photo this morning. But yeah, I mean, it is a cool looking internal, and I think the simplicity of it, again, it is quite striking when you look at it. So when I open up, I mean, this is a great example. So I mean, this is a K-Line Pure Sky. You open this up and it is just a PCB, or this is a JSA modded one. But when you start looking at it and you start seeing just everything's flat, there's no kind of life to it. When you start opening up some of these more boutique pedals and you're seeing the simplicity of these circuits, I think that's really interesting to me, just as somebody who's a bit of a nerd and likes that kind of stuff. Now, whether or not, and this is a whole other conversation, and one that Joe and I have had many a time, whether or not my audience, when I'm playing in a pub gig outside, can tell the difference between that and a PCB. Probably not, but I know.
This is where I die on my hill, and I'm going to die on.
Oh yes, I figured this was coming.
If you like, if you know that what you're playing is cool as hell, and inside it has got the, it's got all the caps, the blue molded caps, whatever, all the transistors. If you know that inside and you feel good when you look at that pedal, you're going to feel good. So you play better because you feel good. And if you play better because you feel good, the audience notice that you're playing better, and therefore it makes you play better. And people say, I love this. People always say to me, Joe, but it's in your head. Like, my whole world's in my head. In my head, I'm married with kids and a pedal company, and I love that. If the real life was the Matrix and I wasn't in it, I don't care. I don't want to know about that. It's real to me, so it's real. And that's where I'm going to go.
And it's a good argument. And it's the same argument I have. I've always been digital. So I play, when I play live, I was Boss Katana, which is sort of digital. It's not quite, but, and then I've got like a Boss GX100 down here that I use. But I now go into a tube amp because playing live, I found that the boss just didn't feel right. You know, it's cool,
So-
and going to PA is very useful with the using the pedal and using the emulators and stuff is very useful, but it just doesn't feel right when you're playing it. And there's something, there is something inherent about that. And again, it's a very sort of crappy guitar-y thing. It feels different. And I think that's also why I like this circuit. So I've got it, I was playing it earlier, I've got it plugged into the emulator on, we got the an IR out and all that kind of stuff. And it feels more real. That's a really odd kind of thing to say, but it does sound more real. Someone actually said, "What do you like about the sound of what?" is my question. There is it of the pedal or of amps and the like. So when it comes to
I think this come up before you started talking about your amplifier, and also Ben is leaving. So see you later, Ben, and
see you, man.
Cheers, Ben. Enjoy the rest of the episode. I think this come up just before you started talking about your amp.
Well, hang on. Shall we see if we can hear it? See if this.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's give it a listen.
What a cool name, by the way. Excuse me.
I want to see what it sounds like and hear what it looks like.
Exactly. That's it. It's almost in tune as well.
Is it close enough for YouTube?
That'll do. Yeah, right. I get comments about being in tune all the time. So this is a kind of a Fendery sound. And I put the pedal on. So that's it, just into a completely clean amp. If I go into the, which again is really cool. So if I turn this down on the guitar. So I mean, that in itself sounds pretty cool. If you now feed it into like a Marshall style amp, so that's just the Marshall amp. Same distortion pedal, and it just brings the whole amp into a whole new level, and does the same on the tube amp. It's not just because it's a modeling amp. So suddenly you've got the ability to turn the guitar down to. So that's kind of the sound you're getting before I hit the pedal on. Suddenly I can control everything from the guitar. So like any good drive, you can use your guitar then to have multiple channels. And same as you get a decent amp when you turn down on the guitar and you can start to kind of clean it up. Now this doesn't go quite clean, to be fair. I mean, it does on the clean channel. So again, it sounds amp-like. It's so simple, but it sounds amp-like because it responds the way a good amp responds.
It is an amp. It's an amp in miniature, is what I realized.
Oh yeah.
You basically have built a miniature amplifier off of this transistor circuit, and when you attenuate it right, the cleanup on it is amazing. I've gotten like some of the best cleanup with this and a fuzz face together. I mean, the legendary, hair raising when you hit the harmonics just right. And it's one of those things that, like you said, you can get like 3 or 4 different stages, and they all, are just like levels that you can take it to, where you can go all the way to full blown. You're going to like blow up the speakers, it sounds like, and everything in between. I mean, it turns your guitar and whatever, you're running in, through it, like putting it at the end of the signal chain, you still have the ability to use it in that way. It's weird, like whether you put it first or last, or it's like sticking another amplifier somewhere there in your chain when you stick it there.
Oh yeah, actually, one of the things I was playing with was just running an equalizer pedal straight into the Electra and just ramping the volume up on the EQ, taking the clipping diodes out and just letting the transistor clip.
It's beautiful without the diodes too. It really is.
And it's just a different type of sound. So I mean, this one, when you take the clipping diodes out, it's mostly clean. There's a little bit of color on it on the transistor.
Mm.
But yeah, when you then slam it with just volume and it just starts breaking up again, it's that amp-like sound and feel. Because, and I suppose I'll probably answer my own question from earlier. The reason it feels amp-like is because of the fact that you can, it responds well to how much you hit it with. So different guitars. So I played it with like a Strat. That was Telecaster bridge I was using there. The neck on that's a P90, and again that responds totally differently. Whereas a lot of distortion pedals, they sound the same. Doesn't matter what. It just sort of different levels of loud, but sounds the same. So yeah, very cool.
No, also I've got to say, if you're playing live using the EQ the way that you use it there, you could dial out some bass if you need to be sitting the mix in a different position. That's a great way of doing it. Yeah,
well, I mean, I do have, when I play live, I have a weird setup because I've got the amp. So I use a Fender bass breaker now, so that's got 2 gain stages, and then it's a great amp. And then I've got the Boss multi effects. Just because we're in a cover band, so I have to be able to make lots of different sounds.
Which multi effects is it? Which Boss is it? Please tell me it's the ME90 or something like that. ME70. One of the older ones.
No, it's the Boss GX 100. So it's touch screen and everything. But I only use it. I only use it for. I only use it for things like octave and phaser and that kind of stuff. And then I have usually a fuzz pedal and a drive pedal, or a fuzz pedal and a boost going into it, because digital never gets fuzz right ever. It can get a lot of things right, and this, I can get this to sound almost like a real amp through the PA system. You turn the fuzz on and it's horrible. Just digital fuzz never works. So I always have a fuzz face type pedal in front of it because you can't emulate it.
Yeah, I mean,
there's so many people's like, only one pedal on the desert island pedal is a fuzz face or a range master. Usually, like you usually
can
hear
get
those
any
two.
tone from a fuzz face. Any tone from a good fuzz face, you can get light boost, overdrive, clean, blown out, insane. You can't go wrong. But you can also go wrong.
But you can. That's the thing. It can go horribly wrong.
If you make it wrong.
If you make it wrong, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that anchor drive you sent me is exactly that. So I've shown you before. I use the Bigfoot King fuzz is what's on my board. It's a really so it's a really small pedal. It fits on the board really nicely. Fits my aesthetic of everything needs to be really tight and small, because I have no room when I'm playing live. I'm usually in a space about the size of a postage stamp to put all my gear, so I can't have lots of these eccentric pedals that you so love, Joe.
Which you say that, but I wanted to get a round fuzz face on my board, so I made one with the knob as the fuzz face. So I am sensible sometimes.
Some of the stuff that you've built and shown me, what do you think of this? I mean, that's like, that's my entire pedal board, and it's just a fuzz. What's in it? And you show me a little circuit.
Well, there's usually some caps in it that are the size of your leg.
That's it. Actually, your obsession with enormous capacitors, but I think it's
they sound different. I swear they definitely do.
You can swear to the hills, my friend. We will never agree on that.
Joe's idea of a tropical fish is more like a marlin.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if you find the right capacitors, I mean, they just sound great. You can get some modern made, same value, test them on a meter, same, and they sound different. They don't clean up as well. They add some high end, like a high end spikiness that you don't need, and sometimes there's some characteristics. I bet you if you got it on a scope, you could see the difference.
I mean, in all reality, yes, I do imagine you can. And it's like Clom. So the Electra you gave me has got a Clom buffer, and I've always been a bit of a.
It has now.
Oh, it has now. Yeah. Now that I've jumped past that ridiculous resistor you had in there, it's only 100 times more than it should have been. But
go big or go home.
Exactly. But the thing about it is, I've always been a bit of a kind of there's no real difference between that and any other buffer. But when you do put it in, you do get more high end.
Yeah.
And it does change the character of the drive. So I mean, with the Electra you give me, it just lifts it out of the mix very, very slightly. And again, something that you can hear on headphones and you can hear in the room, whether you hear it or not in the audience, you probably do, because it does change that upper end of the way the Electra's responding. And it's a really nice combo.
I just feel like no one would notice in a crowd, and I know no one would notice, but for me, I'm a very much a feeling guy, and it's how I feel. Like if I test the pedal and I don't feel good about it, I'm never letting it leave.
Yeah,
it's never going out in the world.
Like early on in our podcast series, like I tune pedals because like I use myself as the tuning instrument because of my synesthesia. Like I'll tune things and it'll create a certain color that I, see as the sound. It's something difficult to explain to somebody that doesn't have the same kind of condition, but there's a lot of other musicians I've talked to that have this similar way of looking at things. That's why they describe things in such odd mannerisms, why they're looking for a brown sound. Literally, they are looking for a sound that when they hear it, they see the color brown in their brain.
Yeah, it was Devin Townsend I was trying to think of as the metal guy who has the same thing.
Mm-hmm. And there's some famous composers that are known to be synesthetic, like they composed their pieces like they were paintings rather than looking at them as notes. So
yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I don't have that, but I'm dyslexic, so I think about things in
similar
ways. Yeah, it's just the brain's wired slightly differently. So I build stories in my head, and I kind of everything I'm playing is based around a story. The effects build into that story, and how it all kind of interacts with each other is part of that overall story. And that's just the way my brain puts it all together for me. So I think you're right. When you're tuning into a particular sound, I think probably Joe, when you were making this quickly to get it out to me because you wanted it before.
Yeah. I wanted to tell people the show.
But actually, to me, there is a sound in it that I really like. And weirdly, there are certain points where it does a lower octave. So the same, and I you probably said you'd never be able to do it again on purpose. No. But if I pick just at the right point on the guitar and I'm sort of up around D on the third string, so I'm sort of playing the octave of the D string, you start to get a lower octave being played, and then you go down it. You can start hearing this lower octave all the way down as you get down the string, and it just comes in and out occasionally. And that is just kind of almost magical in some. It's a really weird thing to say, but it's kind of a magical moment because you suddenly, what sounds like just an ordinary bit of drive, suddenly get that lower octave, and you start getting that Billy Gibbons kind of feel where there's just something extra sound. When I was pushing that fuzz through it, so I was using that Rifkind. Satellite of fuzz, but at 6 volts, so it was really kind of Velcro-y.
Yeah,
pushing that with the Electra. And again, it just really came together, and some of that lower octave comes in, and everything gets the lower octave amplified. Yeah, just weird little magical things like that you wouldn't get just from churning them out on PCBs, And I think sometimes there's that magic to it. I think that's what I really like about this circuit is that I'm definitely going to learn more about this circuit, understand it, because there are so many things that you can do with this circuit. I mean, I'm already looking at it thinking that switch you've got, which brings the diodes in and out, if I swap that out for a pot, I can blend the clipping circuit out, and it starts becoming gain control. So just little things like that, where even I'm looking at it, and I'm useless at this kind of stuff, going, if that's just going to ground, all I need to do is
50k pop.
Yeah, exactly. Solder the right lugs in, and I've suddenly got a blend.
And suddenly you've got a blend control.
Yeah. Or you could even do a 6-way clicker and have 6 sets of diodes.
Actually, what I'd like to see you do, Joe, specifically, is you've made that one, knocked it up with kind of some cool stuff. I want to see you make one with the biggest, most ridiculous.
Oh, yes. I've got the perfect clipping diodes for it. I've got the perfect clipping diodes for it.
Have you got ones that are like small animals?
Mate, I've got to see it. You have to, because what I really want to find out is, how big can you make this simple circuit? How Sailor can you make this circuit?
I'm already thinking I'm drilling holes in the enclosure. I'm mounting the diodes outside like a hot rod car.
That TV, that TV you've got behind you, yeah? It's that. Yeah. So that's the cathode rays taken out of it. It's just a massive capacitor followed by 2 clipping diodes.
It's like that death pedal they built out of the Hammond organ circuit.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Mate, them Hammond organs are class.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
I've got one. I've got a Hammond.
Love it.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's a 60-something, 62, 63 maybe.
Epic.
It's not a B3. It's like one of the L series spinets, but it's basically a Porta B. It still works. Yeah. So
nice.
I always wanted to learn to play it. Oh, that's the thing.
Yeah.
So when it comes back to the circuit, what transistors do you recommend, or have you tried?
Oh,
you tried
man.
them, right?
I recommend trying a whole bunch of different transistors because this is one of those places where you send transistors to find out what they're made out of. And this is a circuit, like, even if you're not going to build them to sell, I think every builder should have one of these in some sort of prototyping board format that they can put their transistors in and try getting different characteristics out of that transistor so they know how it's going to fit into the block of their signal chain when they're designing circuits with multiple transistors. Like, this is like a game changer for me. I think I'm going to be designing like pedals from a whole different perspective now.
Really?
Because it's where you can shape the tone before you even do anything else. So you basically start making yourself little building blocks, and then you start figuring out how you can connect those blocks together in like a bigger circuit, like to do, I mean, one of my favorite things to do is what I showed you, where I took the fuzz face circuit and then added it to that CMOS overdrive and turned it into the fuzz face on steroids, where you can put it, where you can really put it in any place on your signal chain and still get the cleanup and still get everything you like. And it's, but now, like, adding this to that circuit, like having one of these with that CMOS boost, or like maybe I've designed a circuit and it sounds really good, but I'm not getting the volume output that I want from it. Throw this in the circuit, at a point, like maybe at the output, if that's where you want it, or the input, if you want to like really drive your effect that it's going into harder, and then boost your output. You don't even have to put the clipping diodes in, just use it as a clean boost circuit and attenuate it for that.
How many pedals use the LPB1 in that fashion?
Exactly.
Yeah,
like I said, it's just one of those things where I see like the value of just like having this around in a breadboard, and like just a dedicated thing like I have for my fuzz lab, where the fuzz faces have been developed, where I developed the boot face, the pedal that Simon says is a new form of witchcraft. So I mean, that's how things like that happen, is having something you can just like take things in and out and like try them in real time in an enclosure that, you can like plug in with other effects. A breadboard stifles you in so many ways, in my opinion. And it's a good place to like find some things out. But if you really want to see what it's going to do, put it in a box. That's what I say.
Would you do the same with the clipping diodes as well? So to use it as an opportunity to test them out? Because
always, because you can find out so much about like how like different combinations and arrays. I'm thinking about making like my ultimate test board with diode arrays, where you can like chain them together and like 3 on a side, and that way you can make jumpers and like just do all kinds of things where you can see like what gives you the best sound. And that's something that's really taught me, is like just little changes to that clipping array, big changes in the sound.
Well, Brian Wampler's done so many videos on this on YouTube of him designing like basically this sort of circuit and then changing the clipping diodes or the transistor or the input cap as he's going and playing. And
and he's got that
like a free lesson.
Yeah, and he's also got that online course if you want to go even deeper. Like he's got the online, like go into the really deep, nerdy engineering side of things if you're up for that. So
I realize like I'm always like a Beatles fan, like, oh my god, there's Brian Wampler. I can't help myself, but honestly, he just puts so much out there, like, and specifically where he's designing a circuit, he's changing the diodes, and he's basically doing the work for you.
I had that moment when he commented on a video I did, comparing an old SD1 with a new SD1, and just one's through hole, one's printed circuit board, and it was just showing that there's no difference. You genuinely can't hear a difference. And he actually came on to the thing. He's commenting about it and saying the only difference you'd really get is from the tolerance of the components,
which should be better than a newer one. Essentially.
Yeah, but the big thing being you can't mod it as easy. Oh no, you're doing one the other day on the DS one, weren't you? Where you can mod.
You can, but it's a pain in the
yeah,
pain in the keister, as we say.
Yeah.
A lot of people said, "Oh no, you just need the right tools." And like,
you need the right tools and good eyesight and a lot of patience and breath control and the
So you
the
made
luck of
5
the
things that I
gods.
don't have.
Yeah,
clipping in between heartbeats.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
it went
you
from
go back to you go back to soldering like through hole really fast. I've done some surface mount stuff. Like I worked on this like acoustic guitar synthesizer project, and there were little surface mount components every now and then that we had to solder things to, and the solder incompatibility with ROHS compared to the lead acid solder that we were using. It wasn't acid, we were using lead rosin. But yeah, it was.
I still use the lead solder.
I do too. It's military grade. Military demands it. Like you can't do ROHS solder for anything. It's going to be used in marine or aircraft or military.
My pedals can't be ROS compliant because the transistors and the caps are like older than me. So they physically can't be. So there's no point.
We're grandfathered in, mate. Just grandfather me in. I'm using technology that goes back thousands of years. I definitely am not being applied by any of your modern laws of physics and quantum reality at this point.
That's a good get out of jail card, I suppose.
The question is,
how can they ever put you in jail if you're truly free?
I tell you what I'm going to do for this large build of this circuit. I'm going to build 2 halves to it, and one half's going to be ridiculous, and the other half is going to be all modern, small components, and I'm going to do it on a Vero board. So it's like it'll look like one of Simon's builds from back in the day when he was doing just as compact as he can get it. And I'll do that, and I'll put them both in the same pedal, and we'll see.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah. The only thing is the question: do I change the transistors to be the same and the clipping diodes, or do I change them because they're going to make a fundamental difference? As in color, it wouldn't matter the size of the circuit because they would really affect the.
I would say. Oh, that's a good question, actually, because I think on the one hand, it's like how wild can you go? On the other hand, you're kind of going how compact and how kind of modern. Because one of the things Simon used to do, I remember getting him to make me one of his optical compressors in a micro pedal.
Yeah,
and that thing was stacked. You opened it up and it was like a jack in a box. It just exploded out the back. I mean, there is that kind of how small can you go without impacting the tone? I think that's
I'm
thinking it's side of that question.
We're talking about like capacitors and resistors. I'll use standard 50 pence, 10 pence ones in one half, and then the other half I'll use the blue molded caps. The huge resistors, the carbon comps and stuff.
I like these massive clipping diodes. They sound cool.
Well, I've got some germanium ones that basically look like a blueberry. With that sort of size,
Oh yeah, I've got some germanium ones that look like spark plugs. They look like they came out of a small 2-cycle engine or something.
Yeah.
I just love this
They're
idea.
threaded, like they go into a lot.
It all comes down to that. Does it make a difference? Is there a point where you are compromising the actual sound of the thing? So as you're saying about using 50p caps, I'm not a huge believer in orange drops being better than green caps in a guitar.
So the newer orange drops are terrible.
Oh yeah, the newer ones you're just getting an orange coating. You're not getting the same dielectric that was used for the ones that are legendary. And I have a really good friend who will weigh in on that because he's a professional audio engineer, and right now he's a touring front of house sound manager for Sturgill Simpson. And he would search out the old orange drops. He used to have me go on orange drop hunts for him because of their oral characteristics and their clarity for audio circuits, and like just everything about them, especially certain ones of certain voltages, and also like the particular dielectric, like whether it was polystyrene or mylar, those kind of things can affect the tone. So I mean, when you get to the engineering and the mastering level, it makes a huge difference what you put in there.
Oh yeah, recorded, definitely, absolutely. I think when you get into that point where you're going direct into a desk,
and I think that's where I think that's where a lot of this comes from, is like people taking discussions they've seen in Mix Magazine or EQ and places like that about this on that level, and applying it to, oh, well, if it works here, then it must work here.
Yeah, and you can get away with a lot of stuff live. You know, you can get onto a stage with the noisiest rig in the world, and no one cares because the hiss and the everything else is getting pulled out by the mixer. But anyone who's a front of house is dealing with that, and then you hit a chord and no one can hear anything else. As soon as you bring that into a recording environment, you can't have all of that nonsense. You've got to kind of, and unless it adds something to the tone, you can't have all that hiss and spit happening on the recording. So, but then the flip side being that you're not going to take, or I'm not going to take, an expensive boutique pedal on the stage in the rain. You know, I was playing in a tent a few months back, and I've got a 400-pound digital thing sat on a little mat on the floor with water rising up over each side of it. I mean, I'm not sure I like it, but then I'm thinking, well, at least it's replaceable. You know, it's the reason people use Boss pedals. You know, you can, if a Boss DS1 dies, you can go anywhere and buy a Boss DS1.
Yep.
If your pedal dies, it's got to go back to Simon to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's got it. Simon's got it. Yeah, no point. Well, I've got to say a massive shout out to Mike at Secret Effects, because he got in touch with me maybe a year ago, a bit longer than that, maybe 2 years ago, and said, mate, I've got some caps for you. They're too big for me to use. You like the big ones. And he sent me a box. And I mean, there must have been 1,000 caps in there of like bumblebee caps, blue molded caps, original orange drops. The thing weighed like 3 kilograms, I think. Yeah, and he just sent me the box. And I was like, mate, what do you want for it? Nothing. Pay the postage. Like, holy, I'm still working my way through them now. And them old Saga mode caps that used to come in the Dan Electro amps, you know, the green one.
I know the ones you're talking about.
So all of them, they're all amazing. And I think we've spoke about it before. It's because back in the day, they were like the modern technology. They were hospital equipment was being made of that, so they were made better. And now that's why the newer orange drops aren't as good as the old ones. It's because they're not made for hospital equipment anymore. That's moved on.
The
so
consumer,
they're not made to the standards. Yeah.
It's basically the planned obsolescence consumer electronics market is driving the manufacture of these things rather than, you know, because everything that you're talking about now has gone to like really high reliability surface mount. You know, it's like when, you know, every factor for error can be taken out. That's, you know, what they're going to stuff like that. Yeah. And so, you know, and then also you're just looking at the miniaturization of everything now too. So that's where all the research and development's going into. The stuff that we're dealing with, we're the afterthought. You know,
well, that's where tone goes.
We're an interesting little sideshow, basically, like to what they're actually doing in the electronics world. So,
yeah, exactly.
We get the scraps.
Well, I'm happy with that. The NKT275, we always say,
love it.
The cheapest transistor in the day, and that's why they used it. And now it's like, you know, holy grail.
Well, it's like all these things. It's like tube amps. You know, no one wanted tube amps.
Nobody wanted
it. Old tech.
Get rid of this. Get rid of this anchor for me.
Yeah, now everyone wants them. But it's quite funny, though, when you look at the, we kind of go full circle on that, and then you start looking at bands who are really well known for their tube amps moving to Kempers because they're light and they're easy and they're reliable.
And they're getting older.
Well, they're getting older. And also it's reliable. You know, if you having some eclectic amp that sounds exactly the way you want it to sound, and it's got something about it, and the speaker's really well worn, and that's fantastic. But if it breaks down on stage, then you can't do anything with it. So you suddenly sort of look at these Kempers going, well, I can model it, I can make it sound good enough. I think that's where, I think as you're saying, when you read it in sort of mixed mag and then live, there's a good enough factor when you're playing live. It doesn't need to sound like the album. You listen to ZZ Top, so I'm obsessed with the song "Got to Get Paid" at the moment. Which doesn't sound right with a middle-class British accent.
I don't know. It sounds even more gangster to me. It sounds even more gangster to me as a Yank. So I'll tell you, it's like if I saw you in a dark alley and you said that to me, I'd be like, "What do you mean, sir?" I got to get paid.
Excuse me, sir. Like, but you listen to the album version, and he's using. I mean, God knows what he's using. It sounds like a Maestro fuzz, just like running on about 2 volts or something. And it sounds amazing. And you hear him play it live, and it's just his usual magnetone rig. And it's probably got about 3,000. He usually has about 3,000 drive pedals chained together before an amp.
He's got an EQ that EQs his guitar to the frequency of his original 59. So that plays into it a lot.
Yeah, and he makes sure that every guitar and every amp is tuned exactly the same way. But then he doesn't use all those really weird effects that he uses in the recording as much because it's just not as easy to do on stage. It's not as reliable.
No. You don't need to.
Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, exactly.
Not these days. Yeah.
You think about a lot of these things. There is a lot to be said about germanium fuzzes. I love germanium fuzz faces. But there is also a big problem if it's too cold or too hot. They just don't sound as good.
I noticed that immediately in testing the one that I built with the germanium in it, like the way it sounded up in the sunroom when it was warm compared to what it sounded like when I brought it down into the den here where it's a lot cooler, night and day. It's like,
which is why silicon started getting used, obviously.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why Henry, because he knew he'd get the same sound every time he turned it on.
Yep.
The question is, and I do mean the big question is, if you could have anything in the world, any rig, would you choose the big, heavy, expensive tube amp, Dumble, whatever, with the germanium transistors at the right temperature, and you had people to run around and set it up? What would you choose? Would you ever go to a Kemper over that? You wouldn't. You just wouldn't. So
once you stood in front of it and felt the magic,
yeah. I mean, I at that pedal show on that last experience day that I did. Mick set up the Joey Landreth amp, the 2-rock, and his own 2-rock, the classic clean or whatever it is. Oh my god, them two running, smashing you in the face with stacks on that. I think I was smiling 2 days later, and I must have said every single Joey Landreth amp that was available for sale, and the cheapest one I could find was $5,000 secondhand. And I was like, I could do that. If I weren't buying a house, I could do that. Like,
I don't need that other kidney. I've got two.
Mate,
I've got 2 kidneys.
That thing has got I don't know, 20 tubes in it because it's got a harmonic tremolo that's tube driven. Like, come on,
gosh,
that thing is.
If you ever had to retube it, it's like the same cost as a Fender Twin. You're buying a Fender Twin to retube that.
That is actually key as well. that retubing thing.
I'll tell you now, though, if you stood in front of that and played it, it would change your mind about it all. It was biblical.
Oh, I can imagine. But I do dread. I mean, the bass break has only got 7 tubes, and that still going to cost me the same as the bass breaker cost secondhand. You'll never have to change the preamps, mate. They will last forever. No, I won't have to change preamps. I have had to change one of the power amps, but that was because it came a bit battered. It'd been very well gigged before it came to me.
Yeah. I instantly change the tubes anyway. I'm a bit of
and your tubes will last long. If you make sure you keep it properly biased, your tubes will last a lot longer too. Like, that's something a lot of people don't realize is you have to check the bias on your amp every now and then because it changes, and you don't want to let it get over or under biased for too long and run it, or else you're going to do damage to things. So
I wouldn't even know where to start with that.
It's something that's been lost to a lot of people. Yeah.
Nearly Bob showing off here. I'm lucky enough to have a practice room that I can crank my 100-watt PV. That's a great QTY EL84 power tubes. Oh, come on. Oh, so eight EL84
of them. EL84s, yeah.
What even PV is that?
That's one of the really classic PV tube amps. It's like legendary. One of those that some people say is a Marshall killer as far as for heavy metal amps.
EL84s are known for dying early. They don't last very long. That thing must be an absolute money. I love it.
Oh yeah.
Right. As soon as we finish this, I'm Googling that circuit.
Yeah, I think it was all about running as hot as it can. Just basically it was the 80s, I think. Was it the 80s, Neely Bob?
I don't know if I'm more impressed by the eight EL84s or the fact that he's got a room that he can crank it in.
Oh yeah.
Actually, interesting. I can bring this back to the Electra as well, because didn't Peavy take the LPB and make that their drive circuit when it first
did they really?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a real. Well, I mean, a lot of people
kind of like Dumble of Stun.
Yeah,
with the FET.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, so bring it back to the topic.
Well done, because I haven't done a good job.
That's how ubiquitous this circuit is, though. Is it shows up in everything. That's why I thought it was a perfect topic to to bring up, you know, because it's everywhere. And the gear that we play, we don't even like really like know that it's there until you look at these schematics and you start looking for the way that, you know, these transistors are arranged, and you're like, whoa, that's just a common emitter amplifier right there. I could do something with that circuit to make it sound this way or that way. So you can start shaping the tone of your amp design. If you're designing amplifiers, you can start shaping the tone of, you know, stages in your amplifier circuits, like all sorts of different things. Like,
yeah, I was thinking about the cascading it, because I think one of the nice ones, you know, when you're thinking about gain staging, usually sort of 2 or 3 drives at lowish gain knocking into each other. If you can do that, you can do that about something how fuzzes work, wasn't it? You'd sort of push one into one into. But I mean, if you were to do something like that with this circuit and had a few different transistor stages, then going into the hard clipping,
yeah,
quite dynamic. A couple of transistor stages pushing each other, and then hard clip it at the end. You could do something which would give you higher gain but more dynamics, because as you hit each one with a slightly lower volume, you could bring that gain right down with the way you play in the volume control.
Well, and 2, it inverts the signal. So because it's going through just one single transistor in this circuit, you get an inverted output. So then when you go back into another transistor, you re-invert it. So you can start playing with inversions, and that might be where you can like get it to oscillate at weird places. Like, like how are you manipulating the sound in between it inverting between, you know, the 2 places, that kind of thing. It's like, it's a place to really start understanding like how all this works as far as what we like to do. And, you know, as a musician, like it helps you understand what you can look for to suit your sound. Like if you like see something that's tuned a certain way and you know it's going to sound a certain way, you don't have to build it. You just know that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I think that's what's been interesting for me is, you know, I've been playing since I was 16. So what's that, 30 years? And when I first started, I didn't have pedals. It was pedals were around, but they were expensive, or they were a big muff, and that's about it. Really. Although these funny enough, they were these sort of really cheap Japanese imports.
Oh yeah,
come on, that's class.
It's an OD1. It's basically what this is. It's an OD1 clone from the 80s, and I got it the other day.
Class.
It's great. But you know, some of the stuff was terrible. And then, or it was racked. Everything was racks, because it was kind of the 90s, and everyone had racks for these things.
Oh yeah.
And so I didn't really go. Then I got to university, and I was starting to. There was a second-hand shop nearby, so I was buying pedals from there, really cheap. But I didn't really understand what I was doing with them. So I had loads of pedals back then, which I look back at and think, oh man, why did I get rid of that? Because I didn't understand. It's like fuzz. I didn't understand fuzz until about 2 years ago. And we're going to go back to Simon, because it's Simon's fault. So I said to Simon, and he goes, well, and he built me loads of fuzzes. Genuinely, one of the first fuzzes I ever had was one he built me. And it was fun, but I didn't really get it. I didn't understand the fact you had to use your guitar volume. I'd had a big muff before that, which is just, you know, it's an awful sound if you get it wrong. And I was, because I was used to just turning everything up. So you turn the tone control up on a big muff, and it's the most unpleasant sound in the world. And I'm going, what are people doing with these things? And he's going, just try a fuzz bass. Just try it. I'm going to try it. Too basic. I'm going to try everything else. And eventually, in fact, do you know what? It wasn't even 2 years ago. It was eventually about 6 months ago. I bought a fuzz face, just a little mini fuzz face. And I was like, this is amazing. Why have I not tried this? And Simon's going, yep. But I couldn't use it. But, I did a classic one. I was using I use wireless when I'm playing. So at home, it was fine, because I plugged straight into it.
Because you're plugged in, and as soon as you break the connection between the potentiometer, it's game over.
That's right. So I play live, and all I've
no resistance in the air, man. There's no resistance between.
And I'm like, I'm going to clean up for this bit. There's no cleanup. It's just fuzz, fuzz, fuzz.
It's like that's like a Spinal Tap moment. When you're using the wireless.
All of a sudden, nothing works. All this stuff I've been working.
What a film!
And so I was like, well, okay, so fuzz face is the way forwards, but it can't be a fuzz face. So then I started looking into fuzzes that work better in different places. Was where the King Fuzz came in, where your Abbey Road that you've lent me, that seems to work anywhere in the chain. So it can be done. But again, it's understanding these things. So the more I've learned about why pedals do what they do and how they interact with each other, I've learned to sort of appreciate it a lot more. So it's why I love this circuit. It's because it's so simple, even I understand what it's doing. So I know that if you do this in front of it, it's going to do that, and you put this after it, it's going to do it, because there's nothing to it. There's just 4 components or something, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. And I always find that they're the best circuits. I feel, I just really feel like you get a better connection. Like, as in, you roll the guitar's volume back, I want it to get cleaner. Do you know?
Yeah.
I just
that's it.
That's the thing I discovered, is like, you don't even need to put like a drive control for the clipping on there, like you were talking about, where you can roll off the clipping or roll it in, because as you roll off the volume with the clipping engaged, it automatically happens. As you do cleanup, you lose the clipping and it starts becoming more of a clean boost sound.
And also digging in as well, you know, that sort of thing. I love all that dynamics.
Yeah,
but I never used to get it, because I used to practice on board the ship. There ain't many places to store your equipment. Well, actually, that's a lie. As a chief, I had loads of spaces, because everyone would be like, don't just start the chiefs. So I could take as much as I want. I had a stack on board with me. I had a head and a cap. You know, and everyone was like, don't touch it, it belongs to the chief. Like, good.
You see one of the Royal Navy ships like with a lilt. And he's like, hey, Joe's on board.
Can't play the thing, but I had it with me. But earlier on in my career, I would always have, like, you know, one of them Vox plug-in amps or something. And I was just so used to, no matter what you pick the guitar, like, that sound comes out. And then you get used to playing like that. And then when you play properly, it's just, you can't.
Yeah,
you know?
and that actually, and I think that comes back to that statement about how you feel about it. And I think it's taken me a really long time to understand that. And yeah, that I've always found it very snobbish. And then you start thinking about it, going, no, when I've played badly, I've sounded bad. And I don't, and it's like chicken and egg. Was it because I sounded bad that I was playing bad? So I've played at rehearsals and I'll go straight into the PA because it's just easier not to bring the amp. And the singer's PA, every now and again, you'll lose the bass. The sub goes. So all you've got is the top end, and it's unbelievably unpleasant in the room. And suddenly the playing gets worse and worse and worse, and the shoulders go down. But then you stand on stage, you turn up a tube amp, and you hit that first just E chord to make sure you're vaguely in tune.
Right there.
And suddenly you're just like, okay, I'm good.
I'm
yeah,
good.
exactly. That moment.
Exactly. That everything's going to be good from that moment forward.
Exactly.
I've got a theory. I think it's like compounding interest. So you feel good because it sounds good, then you play better, so it sounds better, and you feel it. It's like compounding, and that's
the universal feedback loop.
And that is why Pel and Blue makes pedals sound better.
100%, 100%. And guitars.
And Blue.
But then you've got
snatch. Not for me, it's for me.
But then you've got the bass player playing through a 400-watt amp that's all transistors and it's just solid state, and he just like hits one note and the entire stage just.
Oh yeah.
The drummer starts bouncing along the stage like, turn it down.
So I've decided I'm going to start playing bass. I need to get.
Oh yes, join the dark side with me. It's fun.
Bass is great fun.
Yeah, exactly.
As a guitarist, though, guitarists play bass really badly.
Yeah,
well, I play guitar badly too, so I feel
that's the thing. And maybe you're playing guitar like a bass player, and you just need to put a bass in your hands. That's what I found out. Like
you've seen Joe's hands.
I was accused of playing guitar like I was a bass player, and then when I started playing bass, it made sense because that's what I was like most connecting with as a drummer. I'm a percussionist and a drummer, so I was hearing the bass line so that I would connect with that. And you know, the guitar was just like, you know, for accents. I wasn't really fusing with it as much. So like I was living in the bass land as a drummer. And
it's exactly what Dan Hawkins from The Darkness, you know, the rhythm lead guitarist, whatever. He was a drummer, and he plays guitar like he's a drummer.
Yeah. So I was just watching a thing with it's like it's all guitar. So I was watching a thing with what's his name, Dave Grohl, and he was saying, you know, that's your drum, and then that's your lead at the top of it. So
that finger style,
because it's not even vaguely in tune now, but that drum, that's just that beat. And I think and that's how Dave Grohl plays guitar. It's why all the riffs work, because he's playing it like each string is a different part of his drum kit. So our bass player was a drummer for 20 years.
All right.
and he did his shouldering. So his bass parts are so rhythmically in time with the drums that it locks in really quickly, and then I can do whatever I want. I don't have to be in time. I don't have to be in tune. I mean, there are times where I've played the wrong song and it's not even made a difference because those two are so locked in.
It's like the old adage: if
want.
your rhythm section's on, then anything goes over top of it. Like if you got the rhythm section tight, that's the thing about improvisational jazz. Like if you lock that bass and drums and that in, like all the other stuff that you want to throw over it, as long as you like come up with some sort of cohesive ending, everybody's gonna like think you were brilliant.
Yeah,
really.
In my blues boomer world, we don't say the J word.
As long as you start on the right note and finish on the right note, most people don't recognize.
Most people don't know the rest of it. Yeah, they forgive the middle.
Yeah, you play solos. I'm forever. I'm bad at remembering music, and lyrics and stuff. So I can improvise absolutely fine if I know what key I'm in. We did a gig recently, and I could not remember what key the song was in. So we were in B, it turned out, and I started playing a solo in E, and no one noticed. I had the wah pedal on. Threw a bit of delay
thought you were
on
doing
there.
some like really rad harmonies, man.
Oh man, the bass player looked at me like he was going to kill me because he knew exactly what
he knew.
And all he could hear was the wrong key. Singer didn't notice at all, and it was just me sort of wailing away at this solo with his wah pedal going in delay, and and I knew I was in the wrong key,
and you just like went for broke anyway, man.
I'm committed, man.
Yeah, you made the first move. Like where can I modulate? Where can I modulate? Where can I modulate?
Actually, Brian said something here that this I see you spotted this earlier on me. This is how I actually connected with fuzz. It's exactly this: fuzz straight into a Marshall. Now he says that it was Eric Johnson that he first heard. Eric Johnson can tell which way round a lamp is in a Fender amplifier. One way sounds different to the other.
Mm-hmm. No, it does.
The thing is, some people can actually hear.
It actually matters because of the grounding, and in that circuit, it really does. Like
if
you get your foil side wrong,
I've tried it both ways. I can't hear it. I'll be honest, but I'd love to be able to say, "Oh yes, I can hear that." I literally can't, but he can, and
he reckons red paint sounds best. So there comes a point.
Depends how thick it. Maybe they sprayed the red a bit thinner.
Maybe he knows something we don't. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, they do have some like strange happenings down there in Texas every now and then. So
that's why the blue guitar doesn't sound as good for me. It's not my play.
It's like that's why beat up guitars sound better. They just look like they sound better.
They're certainly more comfortable to play.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god, yeah.
That's another hill I'll die on. Like,
yeah. No,
the pickups have nothing to do with it at all, right? Doesn't matter what pickups you have in it.
It's all tone wood.
It's whether or not you torrified your neck. That torrified maple neck, that's where it's at, man. I tell you, that extra $200 I spent, you can hear it.
That bit of sandpaper he put across the back of the bridge to make it look like you've been playing for 30 years.
I was going to go with my actual vintage guitar.
This is the one that's at hand. This is not really. I mean, this is like all natural playware, but it's from 95. Yeah, it's a made in Mexico 95. But
this thing's just a lump of wood. It literally is just a lump of wood.
But it's a particularly nice lump of wood, though.
It is.
It's pretty cool. It looks like it's light. What kind of wood is that?
It's Norwegian pine, and it's about.
Is it pine? I thought it was spruce.
Is it spruce?
It might be spruce.
He does actually build. He builds them out of spruce, like an acoustic guitar.
That's right.
Do you have microphonic pickups in it?
No.
You don't have microphonic pickups in it? If you had microphonic pickups in it, the resonance of that wouldn't come through in the pickups. That's where tone wood does come into play, is if your pickups are microphonic.
Yeah, and I can see that. But yeah, it is light. It's the lightest car I've ever played.
It looks really cool, man.
Our friend Jason, Maybury Guitars, built that. Oh God, nearly 6 years ago now. It must be.
That's off to you, yeah.
Wow. And it's just so light, and it's gone through a few kind of changes, but it's where I started falling in love with P90s, because I decided I was going to put a P90 in. You know what you do, as you do with Jason, you say to him, "Do you reckon you can stick a P90 in this?" Yeah, all right, mate. Yeah.
Well, P90 is the best pickup. Quite simply.
I'm beginning to think I've got a thin
For a single
line.
coil, they're hard to beat.
I would say that they're better than
telly with two P90s, and the P90s do sound good.
If anyone's ever tried Sunbears, Stu over at Sunbears built me both of my P90 guitars. He's built me the pickups in them, and a staple neck pickup was just like, oh, come on, unbelievable.
Oh yeah,
yeah. He's one of them people that you can say, I want it to sound brown, and he goes, yeah,
I know what you mean.
that's like sort of Entwistle pickups. I love Alan Entwistle's pickups because they're always a bit weird and a bit different. I had some of his X90s in a guitar, and they're just really cool pickups. And he just, I don't know what he does. He just seems to take the sort of the standard pickup and just do something weird with it that makes it better.
And that
also affordable.
That brings us back to the Electra too. It really is a good place to like,
well done,
like take the most advantage out of those pickups. Like you spent, $1,000 dropping a custom matched pair of PAFs in your guitar. You want to get the best out of them. You can figure out like how to dial this in. That's the cool thing too. It's not picky about whether you've got single coils or humbuckers or actives, that sort of thing. You can like really do a lot and bring out all of those frequencies, especially if you add a tone control, like they've talked about adding, like was it Mark Hammer came up with the stupidly wonderful tone control?
That's what I was gonna ask you. What sort of modifications is your favorite, shall we say?
Well, so far what I've done, because I think there's so much more to explore, I'm never going to stop. Where I'm at right now, the favorite things that I've done are the different transistor types and experimenting with the different diode clippings. And next, I'm going to like really get into messing around with the capacitor values. Like I want to build like a completely prototypable board. I think that I thought I had built that pedal that's in the green box as a prototypable board, but I built it as a circuit I'm going to sell in honor of that project. So I just basically used the project values, so they're soldered in place. So I'm going to build my prototype board so I can just plug in. And there's all kinds of places you can tap in to do different things. Like you can eliminate that input capacitor altogether. And
is this the value? Sorry, is this the values, the flash drive that you're going to use on the ones that you're putting out there now?
That's the one. Yeah, that's the one that I built in the green box. That's the first one that's going to be released, but it's subject to change. That's just version 1. That's the pedal that I built based off of what I did for my challenge. As far as values go, I didn't write out any of the diode values. I didn't put a Q value or anything like that, but I pretty much have the 47K resistor soldered in place, the 1 meg soldered in place, all that, the 0.1.
So what your diode experiments led you to?
You know what? That is a bit of a misdraw on that schematic too. I do not have a 0.1 for Q2. Not Q2. I mean C2. C2 that's a 0.022.
Okay.
I think.
I
don't know. I'd have to look in my box. I might have put a 0.01 in there, or a 0.1.
John, what diodes are your favorite to go with this, and what you get out of them? Like, there's some more gainy, some more clipped. How would you go about tuning it?
The experiments that I did for the flash, side of the things with the LEDs, I found that a red LED has given me a really good result. And you see, like on the schematic, it's got the one diode going, and then the other two next to it.
Asymmetrical.
The asymmetrical clipping. The LED is the one diode, and then the other two, I'm using a germanium diode out of my collection that has around 400 millivolt rating, and then I'm using a 1N 4148, or if that's right, whatever that the classic silicon diode, and stacking those together.
If they were expensive, they would be like the Klon diodes. Everyone would want them.
Everybody would want them.
Expensive because they sound really good.
They sound good, and so I've got one of those after the germanium, and using that, it's given me the coolest sounding clipping with the lowest amount of volume loss that I found out of all the different arrays. And you get that germanium clip because of the one side that's asymmetrical with a germanium diode going into a silicon diode. And
Here's one for you, John. Have you tried IR LEDs?
I have
that
not tried
infrared?
any. I have not tried any infrareds yet. I've got some, and that's an interesting experiment that I've seen, listed in mod sections for like the tube screamers, like, trying IR LEDs and other things.
Explain. Imagine that I don't know what an IR LED is, and then don't imagine. How would you explain it to me?
Okay, so you've seen these security cameras everywhere that have like all these LEDs in an array around them, but they never emit any light that you can see. Those are emitting infrared spectrum light, and that's what's lighting up the night vision camera. So it's an IR camera, light basically. You've probably used IR devices all around you in the Navy and never even realized it. Like you're emitting an invisible light frequency, and it's the
TV
UV
remote control.
Yeah, basically every time so you could take an LED out of a broken remote control and try it. You could take it out of a mouse pad. Yeah.
What are we talking about voltage wise, like forward voltage? Is it high or
I don't
low?
know. That's why I have my tester, because I think they vary a lot of times.
Now, there you go. Brian's actually telling us there they've got a darker tone
overall. Yeah. And
so is that leading you to believe that the lower voltage then maybe?
Well, and a lot of it too has to do with current, because that's something else. LEDs are like really more particular about current than they are voltage. Like that's how you really attenuate an LED, as to what its frequencies of like cutoff and like intensity levels go.
Just like you do for your on-off LED, you have your current limiting resistor.
Current limiting resistor. It's not got anything to do with the voltage you're hitting it with.
Yeah.
Because at the same voltage, the LEDs like drawing different amount of current. So I think that comes into play too. So it's one of those things that I'm gonna like probably spend hours and hours like popping things in and out of these different clipping sections. So, and I think the cool thing about it too is the fact that the red lights up really nicely. It lit up
your videos. You were just playing with it.
It lit up better than the green. Like like you really had to hit the green LED really hard because it operates at a higher voltage in its ratings on the tester. So it wasn't really like showing up as much in the red, like everything.
The DS1 actually, I had a DS1 where I swapped out clipping diodes for LEDs and was playing around. And
I remember this.
Yeah. I went through a whole phase playing with that.
Yeah,
and the red was much better than the green. I think I had a red LED in the original. I can't remember what the original clipping diodes are on DS1.
4148.
Yeah, and that sounded quite cool.
I've got a question for you, Andrzej, because with regards to playing, do you find that something with a higher headroom clipping diode like an LED is better or worse for live tones or going? Do you know what I mean? Because if it's more clipped, you've got more compression. Is that do you lose it in the mix? Or
I think I've changed my tune on this bit because I was, again, going back to what we were talking about before. I used to be all distortion, just turn everything up and disguise the playing as much as possible. And I've learned over a couple of years to kind of ease back on all of that a little bit and let the playing and the tone speak for itself a bit more. And I think I will run stuff with a higher headroom, so I have to really dig in to make it clip, because I think that gives me more freedom when I'm playing a little bit. Because if it's all just distorted, you can't come back from it. It's just loud and nasty, and you're trying. Because I started playing blues. That was the big change. I started playing a lot of BB King stuff at home, and you can't do that with a metal zone. Well, you can, but
you can, but not the same.
You can if you modify it.
Well, yeah, I did that as well. Actually, I pulled out. I can't remember what the mod is now, but yeah, I made the metal zone much nicer. But yeah, you can't do that thing of kind of just nice quiet playing and suddenly dig in to emphasize something. So when I'm playing live, I'm thinking about my setup at the moment. I think I've got a sort of fuzz, a tube screamer, and then the amp is kind of the actual gain staging. And it's a Fender amp that's got a slightly martially feel to it, but I have all the gain backed off so that I can just layer in gain to it. And that gives me, it gives me more freedom, feels nicer, and the guitar and the amp feel more connected that way because it responds more to what I'm doing than it just being loud, not loud, loud, not loud.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I always prefer less compressed. In fact, most clipping diode sections, I always add a middle position, which is off. Well, normally, and I prefer it off every time.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
no
the compression
diodes whatsoever.
the compression does help, but as you say, it does then start to disappear. So one of the reasons I didn't use fuzzes for a long time was I had a cheap fuzz that I really loved at home, and then I went and played with it in the band, and I was like, here's my solo, hit the fuzz, and I vanished, just disappeared. And it's only a bass, drums, and singing, and it just wasn't there anymore. It was like, oh, okay. It's like the fuzz face. Fuzz face is terrible for that. You know, you not fuzz face, sorry, Big Muff. You hit a Big Muff on, and it just disappears into the mix. It thins out, and unless you got it set just right, it's horrible. It just doesn't
unless
work.
you've got a Thorpe mushroom cloud and it's got the control to or what's it called now? It's not called the mushroom cloud, is it? It's called.
I know the one you mean, yeah, where you can bring the mids back in again. And that's the other thing. It's learning where the guitar lives as well, because I think it's interesting in the band I'm in now. The singer, he actually sits not that far off the guitar in the mix. It's quite awkward when we're trying to do the mixes. I'm sort of trying to push the mids, and he's more in the mids than the trebles.
Oh, you got overlapping frequencies.
Yeah, so we're fighting for space quite a lot of the time. So the last 2 gigs I've played, the audience have told me to turn up, which no one ever tells a guitarist to do.
Yeah,
they said, no, turn the guitars up, because as soon as you start playing a solo, you disappear into the mix. So I'm now having to, the next gig that we're doing, everything will be set louder, and I've got a boost. It's just like, you know, I'm not going to disappear. Yeah, exactly.
I tell you what, that's the perfect case use for a range master on the treble setting. That would poke right through there.
Yeah,
just
so
a little bit of boost, not like maxed out.
So interesting. If I'm using something like that, I have that early on to set the overall tone of the guitar.
Yeah, and
then I'll use a tube screamer to boost. So and I have, like, you know, a little bit of gain on the tube screamer, and then just let it push out into the mix. But and again, one of these interesting ones that you get when you play that at home, it's the most unpleasant sound in the world. You just sat in the room by yourself, everything's turned down a bit, you hit the tube screamer, and you're like, oh Jesus, that is horrible.
It's an all-out beach assault on your ears, isn't it? It's just
exactly. It's like this, you know, this pedal, this is designed to give you a mid hump, quite a pronounced mid hump. And without a mix, it sounds pretty unpleasant. But as soon as you then bring drums in and everything else, it's like, oh, it makes sense now. I think it's why a lot of pedals get a bad rap, because bedroom players like myself for a very long time go, doesn't sound good. And it's like, because you're in your room by yourself.
You don't have a bass and drums and vocals.
Yeah, there's no context.
And not just that. You turn up a loud valve amp, tube amp for you American fellows. You turn that up, and it changes the game.
And the neighbours knock on the door.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but I think all of these things have to. So again, going back to the Electra, for me, that's going to probably sit in the same position that maybe a start boost would do for me. So where I have something which just boosts the signal slightly to open up the amp, it might sit there with the clipping diodes taken out as kind of the starting point of my tone, and then I'll have a drive pedal, then the guitar distortion, so the amp distortion. So it just kind of sets that up for me. And then if I wanted a bit more, I could pull the clipping diodes in for some of the kind of the more punk songs that we do, or the more modern rock stuff where it doesn't need to be dynamic. You know, Blink 182 does not need dynamics.
It just needs rah 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 rah.
Yeah, but when we start playing some of the more bluesy stuff, then it all comes back out again.
Yeah.
I really like this without the clipping diodes as well as a circuit. Like that's been where I've just kind of had the most fun with it. Like just turning the drive control all the way up, so I'm shunting the emitter to ground, and then playing around with the roll off and seeing how it plays with other pedals. Like it plays really nice with the octave fuzz. I put it through a Fox Toes machine, and putting it after the Fox Tone machine, it turns the Fox Tone machine into an even more like versatile pedal. It's it's been like kind of dogged as a one-trick pony, the FTM circuit. It's like, oh, it's only for this every now and then, but you actually can use the octave setting on the lower strings on this functionally, so it becomes like a doom monster pedal then.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's like this circuit opens up other circuits and shows you things that you didn't know they could do. that's what I think is so cool about it. That's why I wanted to ask you too, like, as far as a control interface goes, when you're looking at an effects pedal from like left to right, the knobs that you're looking at, what do you normally think of? Are you thinking volume, tone, drive, volume, drive, tone?
Oh man,
you know,
you're gonna show me up for being a Neanderthal here.
Because that's one of those things that I struggle with, because I do it like just on convenience. I do it like, how far does this wire have to go to get from here to here? Okay, I'm going to put that here.
Well, that's valid, because you're changing the capacitance in between the circuit.
Yeah,
because the wire itself has a certain amount of capacitance,
but it's negligible.
The wire is, how long it is,
but that's negligible. And what that's what we're talking about. Like, you know,
is it though to everyone? That's
to everyone. I don't know. Maybe not Eric Johnson in Texas. Whenever he can hear whether or not he uses 24, 26 gauge wire.
Wires.
Yeah, I'm
for me.
Well, see, I used the red wire with the black stripe because I wanted a little bit more of that green sound.
The black stripe.
Well, I think Andrzej's got a much more valid point on this, because he plays live and he actually,
that's why I wanted
to
have
to adjust them on the fly. Whereas I'm coming from left wing.
That's the same thing. Like, I put them wherever is convenient for me as a builder and my mad scientist mind, you know, to put them. And what does a player think of when they look at a pedal? What's in your mind? This is going to always be on the left. This is always going to be on the right. And these are going to be kind of in the middle, or does it matter?
Yeah, it does. And I think, so funny enough, the first thing is labels. Some kind of vague clue. I know a lot of people that don't label anything at all, and they get like comments about that. So Joe. I think labels are the first thing, because at immediate glance you was going, I can't remember which way around this is, so you turn the volume up instead. For me, I think it's generally volume on the left as I look at it, tone in the middle, gain on the right, whatever a tube screamer is, but tone always in the middle. That's the thing for me. Tone has to be in the, if it's off to the one side.
You hate a DS1 then?
Absolutely.
Levels in the middle and gains on the right and tones on the left.
That comes to the fact that the next modification I'm going to do on the Electra is adding the tone control, and I'm going to experiment with what Josh did on his short circuit series, where he's doing a pre-tone control, replacing the input cap, and then I'm also going to experiment with the post-tone control and see which one of those two I like best. But I wanted to know where I was going to put it in my circuit on the board, like in the box, so that it, like, I'm thinking ergonomically for what a player is going to do, so that when I'm testing it, I'm trying to think about what the end user is going to end up with.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if we think about a tube screamer, I'm the wrong way around actually, because it's so this is your level, that's your gain, that's your tone. Now for me, the only thing about that is
I think that's opposite. Like what
guitar pedals are backwards. Because for me, a guitar pedal, and like the original fuzz faces, should be input on the left, output on the right, whereas we're the other way around. So in my mind, it's gain is your pre-stage, then your tone, then your post amplification. So for me, it goes gain, tone. Yeah, so you plug into where the gain control is, you then tone, and then your overall volume coming out into the next pedal, because that way you can then, it's easier for you to then stack those pedals because you know which side the volume. But as long as it's labeled, I don't really care, and as long as I can see it. So the other one that really drives me mad is Joe, you're a great example of this, is controls where you can't see the markers. So there's no line or dot, it's all silver, and you're looking at it going, I have no idea what the setting is.
So I have a theory on this, and this is why there's no labels, no markers and stuff. It's because when you label something tone, people go, that goes to 2 o'clock. You label something volume, that goes just a little part, and they don't use the knob to see what it does. So you don't label it, they go all the way down, all the way up. Oh, it sounds good there. And then I find that people set my pedals to their setup, rather than going, oh, this goes to there. This goes to there.
So we're going to start with everything at 12 o'clock. Every guitar reviewer in the world, we're going to start at 12 o'clock. And again, I think it's not until you start experimenting. So this was a thing with the fuzz face. Actually, do you know what? The best ones are Rat for this, because no one realizes when you first buy a Rat, the tone's the wrong way around. It's not the wrong way around, but you know what I mean.
I don't follow this
until they made the change and then fix the sweep just by changing lugs.
Brian, again, a man after my own heart here. I'm with you there, mate. No labels.
You're right. You do.
I don't think it's people deciding that this is where it's set consciously. I think it's unconscious bias. I think they go subconsciously, this is where it's set, and they just set it. I do it all the time. When I'm setting my amplifier, I try and forget all that, turn it right the way down, turn it up until it makes the most difference. As soon as I feel that bit where it jumps and makes the most difference, right, I'm setting it there. That's the most open. So I think every single control.
And I'm the same. So Tube Screamer is always, I don't know if you can see this, but Tube Screamer for me is always set like that. That's always how it's going to be. And the problem with that is that that's a TS9. If I pick up a TS808 and I do the same settings, it won't be right. If I pick up a TS9, it won't be the same. But you're right, I do automatically do that. But at the same time, if I'm setting up to play live, I can't be adjusting every pedal every time I set up, because I've got 5 minutes to get all my, well, say we have an hour to set everything up. We have no sound check because we're in a pub, and your sound check is the first song. And it's the, you know, it's the singer walking to the back of the room and back again and saying, turn up. It's me then on the wireless system kind of meandering out, desperately trying to remember the chords as I walk. And it's that kind of, you don't have time to go, I just need to just notch it a bit. You can do it. I mean, you'll see me crouch down and kind of like quickly change a few things here and there. But that's why I quite like having the digital setup for everything that isn't drive, because I just switch it on and it's right. And, you know, phaser is always going to be.
That's the difference that me and John maybe don't experience, because I don't know about yourself, but I haven't played live since 2010. You know, it's not a thing.
No, I mean, the last live playing I've done, it was either on drums or bass, and like I rarely play guitar live as an artist. It's always for myself, and I just build these things for other people that actually do play. You know, it's just I just like doing it. Because I like hearing other people create with it. So yeah. I
mean, if it sounds good, it sounds good, you know. And I think there's, you do get snobby about it, and I do get irritated by certain things, especially if I can't. I don't care if it's not labeled, as long as I can see where it is. That's my big thing. It's when I've got a few where they're really bright, kind of silver knobs that don't. There's a notch in it, but you can't see it. So I've got like fluorescent paint that I dot on pedals like that, so that I always know roundabout where it is. Because also, if you find a setting that you like, you then throw it all into your bag, and I'll take photographs of what I've got as well, so I can kind of see it. But you throw it all in the bag, take it all out, and all the knobs have changed where they are. So it's being able to quickly kind of go donk, 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 donk. So you'll see so many people have got like little bits of tape stuck to it, or they'll have it stuck on the front with their favorite settings. They can just quickly put it back in, because when it was thrown into the gig bag, it all went to crap. So
always
it's being able to see it quick. Yeah, exactly. So it's being able to see
you just reminded me, I've got a real hatred of fluorescent paint. And so basically on board the warship, when you're a lower rank, you get this like 3 high bunk stack, and your only space in the world is like a coffin with a curtain. That's all your only private space. And when you get in bed, you can make it nice and dark and you go to sleep or whatever. And now I've just went to a wedding last weekend gone. I met up with a guy that I've served with many, many times, one of my best mates in the world. Well, he actually got hold of the fluorescent paint and drew a massive penis in my bed. So every time I went to bed and got in this coffin, there's just this massive, and you know, the tip was right at eye level. And so I can't stand fluorescent paint. I'm never going to put it on a pedal.
Oh my God! How do we top that to finish off, man? I mean, that's a story.
That is a story, man.
That is a great point. We're hitting the hour and a half.
Yeah,
that is our ending.
Days,
so,
but
if anyone
our ending is
a massive fluorescent penis on.
Well, my question, Joe, is: did they put LED lights along the line when they first painted it, so it really lit up and popped the first time you ever saw it? So you thought, my God, how many did I have?
On a warship designed in the 70s, there's no LEDs.
Oh, okay. Well,
Well, we're going to call it there, because we're an hour and a half in, and I feel like we're talking about drawn penises.
Well, we are. I'm going to
quickly devolved. Yes.
One pedal thing before that. So Brian's put a great comment here. The other thing he hates is bright LEDs, the eye burners.
Yes,
so when you look down, and it's like a laser
pet peeve.
in your eye.
Yeah.
So I mentioned this a few times in my videos. People have put dimmers on their LEDs now. So a variable resistor is just in line with it, and you can set the brightness you like. What a great
biggest
idea.
resistor. The biggest resistor in that pedal you gave me is the one that
LED.
dims the LED.
Of course.
It's massive.
The one that has nothing to do with tone, and that's
And-
the hallmark of a
And
Sailor Joe
it's
build.
actually a 10K. I think it's a 10K resistor, which is like 10 times what people normally use, and it's for that very reason, to make the LED
Oh,
less
man, that
bright.
would have blinded me otherwise if that was 10K. My God.
Yeah, exactly. Right, well, I've been Hello Sailor Joe. It's a goodbye from me.
And goodbye from Space Wolf, John Mulholland in the US.
And goodbye from Andrzej here in the UK.
Cheers, everyone.